Well, good morning. Good morning. Hope everyone is having an amazing Friday. Good morning, Paula. You was here on time. Happy Friday. Yes, we this week I needed Friday to get here. But yeah, so I'm excited to be here. We have a great conversation. Um, it is for my singles, but I believe that as always, these principles can be applied to any aspect of our lives because we want to get back into the habit of having God be a part of every aspect of our lives, including the dating process. And there's something that keeps happening that I keep hearing, and I've been hearing it for like the last 5 years. And the one thing that I hear often is, I don't want to deal with the next person unless they're my spouse, right? I don't want any man coming into my life or any woman coming into my life unless they are my husband or my wife. And while that is a great thing to do, I want us to always remember that if you are praying for anything, right, that means that God can use people to come into your life to be a blessing to you. Okay, so I'm going to share a story. I shared this in my book, Dear Single in Love. You can go to my link tree. You can order it from Amazon. It's an ebook and it's a physical copy, and it could be to you in 2 days if you have Amazon Prime. So back in 2016, yeah, 2016, my spiritual mom, she got married. I went to her wedding and met this guy at her from her church. He's a pastor. Um, to me, very attractive, and I was just like, okay. But I also knew that I was in a season in my life that I was not ready for a relationship, right? I'm one of those people, and again, I cannot speak for anyone else but for Tanisha. But when I am in financial distress, I cannot focus on finding love or being or especially finding a new relationship. If you're in a relationship, I feel like those things are going to be a little bit different. But I was single and I was not like looking because my focus was getting back on my feet, getting my finances back in order. And that was what I was doing. But because I asked God this question, is the only reason why I moved forward and getting to know this person. And I asked God, did you send this person into my life? That is the question that I did not focus on, is this my husband? I asked God, did you send this person into my life? And the reason why I now encourage everyone to ask that question. So when you are in this dating process and you do meet someone that you have a good chemistry with, a connection with, if you ask God that question, if you pose that question, you are going to be able to open up opportunities for God to also still be a blessing to you or for you to be a blessing to someone else. So let me tell you what happened more with this gentleman and how we ended up where we ended up at. So we dated for about 2 months. Yeah, we dated for about 2 months. And in getting to know him, this is where I realized that Christianity was not the same because I was really having any yes, Paula. Paula said for any type. That's why I said this is a principle that can be applied. It doesn't have to just be with dating, right? You can ask that question for every single person that you encounter. Okay. So this is the reason why I think that we should start shifting to this question versus doing something else. So but yes, I learned, just he was an example to me that or Christians, don't hear from God, or pastors don't hear from God. And some people just really struggle hearing from God, and they go to church every Sunday out of tradition. So he confirmed that, but he also opened up my eyes that, like, oh wow, this is really happening. But in that, he let me know like he did struggle. He was like, I hear God sometimes, but I don't hear him all the time. And so at that time, the same way I'm going live now, I used to go live back. I used to go live really a lot, 2014. No, 2015 through 2017 was really heavy. And he started to follow me on social media. And he one day at dinner, he was like, how do you get these messages? And I was like, what messages? And he was like, the messages that you do on social media. And I was like, God gives them to me. Like, I get downloads. And we ended up having that conversation. He was like, wow, like I don't get those, or I never got one like that. And that made me pose the question, well, how do you get your Sunday sermons? Because he was not the senior pastor, but he was like one of the junior pastors. So he did preach whenever the pastor would tell him to. And he was like, oh, my pastor just tells me what to preach. And I was just like, interesting, like no judgment, but interesting. And I also at that time was struggling with my faith, right? So again, I'm dealing with for the first time in my life financial crisis where like money is coming in slow, opportunities were not coming in abundance, and some days I had nothing in my account. So that was my reality. So we were both two people in two struggling situations, polar opposite. And when I say to you, at the end of this was one of the biggest blessings that I ever encountered because of I realized it's not always the end goal of being married. Right. Some people, God is going to sit into your life to be a blessing, and some people are going to be a lesson. Now, I do believe that if we are bringing God into it in the beginning, it can definitely just be more so a lesson. More so a blessing, not a lesson. If we bring God into it early enough, this can be more blessings versus more lessons. And so we had gotten to a point because we was praying together every night. We were doing like our own mini Bible study, and that also made me realize. And I'm gonna talk about this about spiritual manipulation, right? Some people will use that as a way to kind of like get you tied into them, because now you're like, oh, we're praying together and I'm praying over you in the whole like beginning of the dating phase. I think that is definitely great when you're like fully courted, you're fully like in a relationship, but when you're dating, I think that can be a little on a thin ice scale. But that's something that we dealt with. And on our last date, because this was the last date, we had went to Barnes and Nobles, and I'm there reading this book, and there's a book about purpose. There's a couple. I wish I could remember the name of the book, but there was a couple that moved from the East Coast to LA, and when they moved to LA, they both went into like what God had called them to do. So the husband, I think, started a Christian-based fitness program, and his wife did something very similar. And it was like a brand collaboration that they did, but it was all Christ-centered. And they was talking about their struggles of how they, started with nothing and, almost going bankrupt, and God coming in at the last minute. But at that time, I was sitting there reading that book and I'm crying because I am like talking to God in my mind, like, God, I have no food in my house, right? I need food. I have no groceries. Like I was to the bare minimum. Okay. Maybe having some canned vegetables if I had that. But my house was bare. And I'm sitting there and I'm just having this silent prayer with God. So when the date was over and now we're leaving, we stand outside, and the gentleman asked me, he was like, he's like, do you need food? That's how he posed the question. And I was like, I mean, I can eat. He was like, no. Like, we're gonna go out to eat. But I'm asking you, do you need groceries? Guys, immediately I got mad at God. I was mad at God, right? Because why would you tell this man that I had no food in my house? So yes, I'm thankful that God heard me, because again, I struggled with my faith. Sometimes I did wonder, did God hear me? Did he hear my prayers? And here he was within like 15 minutes of me telling him I need groceries. He done told this man who now heard God clearly. And he's like, I want to take you food shopping because God said I have to bless you. And I was like, no, because again, it's about embarrassing. I would rather God send a stranger into my life, let that stranger come in, and that stranger blesses me, versus someone who's potentially trying to be my husband. And now he knows that she has no food in her house. Like, she's really that broke. That's how I perceived it. And I understand now that's not how God perceived it. And we ended up, he went food shopping for me because I couldn't go with him for whatever reason. So he was like, I'll just go, give me a list. And so God prompted on my heart. If I told him, then I'll tell him what to get you. So I was like, no, I think God should take you food shopping and he'll tell you what to get. And when I say this man walked into my house with 3 bags of groceries, And I was just like, it was everything that I needed, everything that I wanted. There was stuff that I wanted. It wasn't just my needs being met. Some desires were also being met. And I was just like, wow, God. And I think it was at that point, he and I both got to the point, we both was like, we want to move forward, but is this the right thing for us to do? And this is the other thing that I started to do. And I shared this on a few posts this week, talking about the whole dating realm, especially for those who are, Christians. And they're like, I'm tired of, dating someone for 6 months. Paula says, sometimes embarrassing moments are to keep us humble. That's true. That's a good take. That's a good take, Paula. I like that. I will put that into my pocket. I will definitely receive that. Sometimes it is the humble. Yeah, because again, especially if you've never been in this situation. Like, I was a spoil you brat. I was one of those people. I can just make a phone call, and God, and those people would just come, send me the money, drop the money off, whatever. And God was like, "No, we're not doing that. Like, you need to calm down." And so, yeah, I think, Paula, I received that. Yes, that's the way to humble us. And so, so we decided together that we was going to do a 3-day fast and pray, separate, not together, right? And I put that stipulation because, again, about the spiritual manipulation. So I said, fine, we can do that separate, and then we'll come back. So we had set a date and time that we would talk to one another, and whatever answer we both had is the answer that we have to receive. And he said, he called me at the third day. I heard no, he heard no, and we parted ways. And that was such the easiest way to break up with someone, No animosity, no frustration, no anger, because God both told us no, right? And so I tell people, if we get into that habit, right? So if you first ask God, hey, did you send this person into my life? Right? So that person, yes, God will say, yes, I did. No, I didn't. So sometimes I will quickly end the conversation when I hear a strong no. Because sometimes God will be like, nope, 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 nope. And I'll be like, oh, yeah, let me just leave this one alone. Because again, he knows the end. So if he knows that this is not going to be beneficial, I'm not going to send any blessings in here, nothing like that. Keep pushing, go left, right? And then there's some people that he will say, yes, I sent them into your life because you have other things that you are praying for, right? You're praying for other things. If the only prayer that you're praying is, where's my husband or where's my wife? And you're not praying for anything else, I'm so thankful for you. I'm happy that is your only prayer. But for most of us, that's not our only prayer. We are praying about our health. We're praying about our wealth. We're praying about our families. And you don't realize that other people have other skills and talents and abilities that they can come in and be a blessing to you too. So it's not always going to be this person is your tell all be all. This is going to be the person that I marry, but this person has opened up doors. Because I said something to a person yesterday. He was like, oh, he was like, yeah, I don't stay in contact with any exes, And I said, unfortunately, because he was like, because why would I want to keep toxic around? And I said, well, unfortunately, everyone does not end in a toxic relationship. Everything is not a bad thing. Some people, it can literally just be, yeah, we're just really better as friends. And I've had some people that we went from dating to making money together, right? They're teaching me about stocks. They're teaching me about, I'm teaching them about digital products. We're helping one another. There's no romantic, but you know what? We can become business associates. We can support one another. I will still to this day, if someone calls me in New York and they're like, they need a photographer, a videographer, I got you. I got somebody that can help you because it's one of my exes. But we're not together. But if I know that you do great work, I'm going to support you and I'm going to pass that information on. Now, unless God told me, just like the other gentleman, we cut all communication. There was no ties. Again, because he's given us the instructions. So you just got to pay attention to what God is saying versus what you're saying. So I wanted to share that because so often I feel like I'm seeing people missing other opportunities, other blessings because they're only focused on this one thing, right? This person shift the mindset from, is this my spouse, to why is this person here? Right? Is this person supposed to be here? Because some people are going to be there for just a season. And again, you also need to redefine what is a season. A season could be a week. For God, for God, God can, he can say, no, this season is going to be for 1 week. And there could be something that you could be a blessing to that person, or you can confirm something for them. Like, in my dating experience has been very unique like that, where I will confirm something for somebody, or, we're in our conversation, they're like, Dad, like, you just mentioned that, and I was just praying about this, or I was just thinking, like, maybe I should, and you just gave me the answer. And then that would be the last time that we speak. And I hold no hard feelings, because I understand that was a blessing to that person. People are literally out here walking around praying for things, talking to God about things in their minds, the same way I was in Barnes and Nobles that day. And God is going to send someone who's going to answer that prayer for you, give you an answer that you are looking for. So no, it didn't end in happily ever after. But guess what? You got an answer to a prayer that you have been praying about. So I feel like that is the win. I feel like you're not wasting your time. You're not heartbroken. You're not wasting money, but you have now received an answer so that you can go forth and continue to do the work that God is doing for you. We got to really get out of this. If it's not this person and they're not my husband or not my wife, I'm not speaking to them. Cut that out, because that's still going along the mindset that, with this song that Drake had, no new friends, right? And again, I'm not saying these people have to be your best friends. Some people can easily be great associates that you can tap into for referrals, for affiliates. Again, if you are an entrepreneur, business mindset, you know what I'm talking about. You know that sometimes those business opportunities come when it's somebody that you might have just been chatting with, and you're like, I kind of like them. I'm not really sure. But the more that you get to know them, you're like, okay, this might not be it. But you know what? Guess what? I was able to get him in contact with this person, and this person was able to help me, restructure my business plan. You do not realize how many blessings you're skipping, right? So I don't want us to keep skipping. I also don't want us to go into this with this mindset of, I'm going to be the person that's going to be receiving all of the blessings. Right. So you heard what I said. In that exchange with that gentleman, we both received the blessing. Right. His blessing might not be as tangible. Mine was tangible. He brought me food. He brought me groceries. His was not tangible, but his was actually very important for his walk. Because if you're going to be a pastor, your people want to know that you hear God for yourself. Right. And there's going to be times, I've been in them situations as a speaker, when I'm standing up there and I'm talking. Sometimes it happens in here when I'm on live. I could be talking about something. I can have my notes and I'm ready to go. God will shift that conversation and go somewhere else, because someone who's tapping in right now, they need to hear that little snippet. And that's why you had to go left. A person who cannot hear from God is not going to hear that. They're not going to go left. And that person's going to sit there and not receive the message that God was trying to get you to deliver to that person. Because you're like, well, this is the script. They gave me the script. I got to stay on script. I got to stay on task. If you are fully walking with God, we all understand how sometimes he's going to derail it. He's going to make it go another direction, because somebody out there, that one is going to be the one that needs exactly that message. So we have to get our people into a space of having that relationship so they can hear for themselves. I don't want you to ever get into a space where you're dependent on your pastor to tell you what the scripture says or to tell you what God said. I want you to get to a space where you're like, you know what? Thank you for what you said, but let me go sit and meditate, and let me go make sure that this is what God is telling me to do. Right? So that's why I say sometimes you're not going to be the person just to receive all of these amazing blessings. You can also be a blessing. The last thing is that sometimes confirmation is going to require you to surrender. Right? This is not your journey. This is actually God's journey. If we're going to do it the way he wants it, we want what he wants. This is his will. So we have to surrender this. We have to really just be like, God, I'm ready to surrender. I'm ready to release it, because I fully understand this is not for me. This is not my will. This is yours. And so when you get into that space, you now can have an understanding like, okay, God, I feel you. I know that you're bringing the right person at that right time. You keep sending these people, they're helping me. They're blessing me. I'm blessing them, and again, this doesn't have to be you don't even have to go on a date to receive a blessing, right? And I think that's something that I want my singles to understand. I'm not saying that you have to go and engage physically with each person. Sometimes, just in those little text conversations, you can be answering a question that can give somebody a perspective that is confirmation. And that could be the only encounter that you ever had. It is not always, well, let me go 3, 4, 5, 6 months. Because that's something that a gentleman on Threads had said. Like I think he said he was dating a woman for 6 months and then he asked God if she was his wife. And I was like, well, why did you wait to 6 months? I said, because nine times out of 10, 6 months you have already caught feelings. I said, so if God tells you no, you are more prone to ignore that no because you already invested. I said, so the first question that you should have asked God in the beginning was exactly what the gentleman and I did. Is this person supposed to be in my life? I said, and then once you get comfortable, because let me tell y'all, I think I've only asked God one time if somebody was my husband. Only once, one time. That's not something that I'm going out here and I'm like, oh, let me ask God about every person. Because again, I understand every person is not my husband. And so I encouraged him. I said, next time, maybe like that 2 month mark, maybe even a month. Once you start knowing that you really feeling this person, you can go ahead. You don't have to do it together. I encourage you to do it together, especially if you have two people that are following Christ. It should not be a pull and tug, but you should be able to go to that person and say, hey, let's do a 3-day fast real quick. Let's see if this is what God wants for us, and then we'll move forward from there. And he was like, yo, I never thought about that. I said, but to get 6 months and now you're asking that question, and now you're probably hearing no, you're frustrated. You're mad. You feel like you wasted time. I spent all this money. Okay, but no one told you to do all of that. If you're really going to follow Christ, then you should have been having these conversations in the beginning. God will tell you where to take her, right? God knows your finances. You don't have to go out here. He knows her, so he will tell you how to impress her. We have to get into that, especially we say we want a Christ-centered relationship, right? So I just wanted to share that because, like I said, I've been hearing a lot of these comments, a lot of these conversations. You know, I have a book, Dear Single in Love, 8 Principles for the Woman Waiting for Her God-Ordained Purpose Mate. That book, you can go to my link tree and you can purchase it, like I said, from Amazon. But that I think that is in chapter 4. Yeah, chapter 4, this question. So it's a quick read, quick information, but you definitely can learn a lot. That's going to help you. But I just wanted to have this conversation, and I hope that anyone who's going through this, I'm going to give you a prompt because that's what I'm trying to do now, right? I want you to ask God, am I praying for clarity or confirmation of what I want? And then before you ask if they're your spouse, ask God, did you send them? Or did I invite them out of fear, out of loneliness, or out of ego? Right? So these are multiple questions. This will be pinned in the comments. So matter of fact, let me copy and paste this right now into the chat. So anyone can go ahead and copy that. So I'm gonna put it back on the screen, but I'm also put it in the chat. So yeah, this, like I said, this was a conversation that I felt was necessary. I keep hearing all of my singles out here saying these things, and I just don't want you to keep going through this being super frustrated. This is a frustrating process with dating in 2025, but I do believe that we can simplify it a little bit by just really, really inviting God and starting with that question. I think is the best way to do it, at least in my opinion. It's been giving me peace, right? I'm not in a relationship, but I have more peace about why someone is not here yet, because I see how I have been a blessing, how other people's have been a blessing to me, and the connections. And then sometimes it's just a whole out crap show. Like, we're not even going to talk about the bad moments or the crazy moments. But the crazy moments, I just feel like confirms, that we hear things, like we're paying attention, like our discernment is a little bit better. I think you're going to have to go through some of those for discernment, because I think so often we do ignore red flags, right? And they can be real bright, like bright This is not as bright, but it could be bright like this. And you will be like, oh no, it's okay. And they'll be like, no, it's not okay. Stop making that to be okay. All right. So I just wanted to, and I hope everyone enjoys this conversation. Share this with someone, especially if you have any single friends, single family members who are struggling to have more understanding or at least some guidance. And I do encourage you to share that with them. Meet me back here Monday at 7 a.m. Central Time. I'll probably be a lot more on time on Monday because my schedule will be back to its regular schedule. But yeah, so have a good weekend. Be well, be great. Live life on purpose today, right? Live life on purpose, with purpose, and everything that you do. Be a blessing to someone in any way that you possibly can. So, Paula, thank you. You have an amazing, amazing weekend, and I will talk to you soon. Have a good one.